I was looking forward to spending some time with all the professors, because I think there's a lot you guys may or may not know about what goes on with the research and development part of PCI. And it would be great to have that much closer alignment between the work that you folks are doing in the studios or might do beyond the studios, and what informs where we might be headed with future R&D projects. So that's sort of my intent, and I'll keep my part brief here, because I like to leave some time just for some back and forth and get feedback from you guys, or answer questions from you folks as far as where there may or may not be opportunity that we can explore. So I'll start out just giving you a little bit of a background on the research and development program within PCI. It was actually started officially way back in the early 70s, and they were looking ahead. They wanted to figure out ways that we could be actively or proactively looking to meet the long-term needs of the industry. And there were various things that happened over those years, some very good, interesting projects. By the mid to late 80s, they PCI actually brought in a full-time research director, paid staff position, to help orchestrate what was going on for all the projects and whatnot, and to help with the communication as much as anything. And it became a committee that actually reported directly to the board, which is actually now referred to as a council. So the Research and Development Council, of which I had been chair for the last 4 years, and I've just recently passed it on to Andy Osborne from West Cheney Elstner, reports directly to the board of directors. The funding for our R&D, for the most part, comes from some apportionment or allotment from PCI. PCI's main source of revenue is the dues that it charges its membership, primarily the producer members. So over some period of time, I can't think how far back it goes, but for some period of time, the allocation has been 7% of the dues collected have been apportioned or allocated to R&D. So we have sort of an R&D fund, if you will, and it's through that we fund the various projects and programs that we have going on through the years. Some of them have been quite large. We just finished one that the PCI part was about $750,000, but with all the other contributions, it was well in excess of $1.25 million for the research that was done on ultra high performance concrete. I'll tell you all a little bit more about that here in just a bit. But the dollars that are spent by PCI are often augmented by other funding from membership, primarily producer members that might have interest in some particular topic. They've done a lot over the years to embellish, to increase, to substantiate our industry's body of technical knowledge. And I think if you talk to anyone in PCI that's been around for some period of time, they would say that is definitely one of PCI's greatest strength, is its body of technical knowledge, because we've got a lot invested in it through the years. We've got all kinds of various technical committees. We've got all kinds of programs that are geared on the technical side. And, so as you can imagine, much of what we've done over that period of time has been more structurally or material oriented type of research to help give guidance to shape and guide the building codes, whether ACI or ASCE, IBC, what have you. We've partnered over the years here, not too far back. We've partnered with with NIST. We're just concluding a big project with Oak Ridge National Lab. We've partnered with PCI Foundation and are looking at another project currently with them. We partnered with the Canadian Precast Prestressed Concrete Institute, looking at things like progressive building collapse, seismic resistant structural systems, design for fire, impact of precast construction for long-term sustainability. Now that was a very lengthy topic that went over several years that we were involved with CPCI back about 10, 12 years ago. I guess the projects that might be of interest that are current, as I say, we're just concluded one with Oak Ridge National Lab, and that has been with a specific focus on trying to come up with a lightweight cladding an insulated lightweight precast panel to use as a building facade that is targeted to reduce the current practice weight by about 50%. So ultra high performance concrete of some sort or some variant has been used in that to try to thin the width of concrete. One of the things that was hanging them up was trying to come up with anchors and connections and so forth that were non-metallic, so that there weren't going to be any thermal bridges or whatnot. But anyway, that's getting close to concluding. I mentioned the ultra high performance concrete that has been going on for just about 4 years, and it has concluded. Basically, the intent with the ultra high performance concrete research was to prove that we could develop that type of material using non-proprietary systems. I mean, there's several that are out there that are available, but they greatly increase the cost of concrete. So what the drive was to try to figure out, could we, without using those specific materials, could we come up with something that would be about a third of the cost, targeting somewhere around $600, $700, $800 a yard, that would have strengths of minimum compressive strength of 18,000 psi and a tensile strength of just under 2,000 psi. And we were able to prove that we could do that. We had 6 or 7 different producers from around the country working as part of the team, working with the project team to come up with concrete mix designs and actually be able to prove that we could get those strengths. Took that a bit further, and half of them came up with bridge products, half of them came up with building system products to go ahead and pour large samples, if you will, for testing, to go ahead and see if this material, in reducing the volume of concrete used, but using optimal shape configurations, could have significant structural capability. And we found out, particularly in the bridge sector, there's quite a bit of opportunity there. We're still pushing a bit on the building sector to find out where there might be opportunities. But this, to me, if we're looking ahead here into my little speech, this might be something that would be of very significant interest to you guys when you're looking, or you folks, I don't mean to keep saying guys, when you folks and you looking at your design studios, and some of the topics you might want to cover is when you're trying to come up with some very novel thinking of how something might be approached, but the bulk, the mass of the concrete seems to be getting in the way. UHPC is a potential problem solver there that could open up a whole lot of different doors for the industry. And of course, that's what the industry has been trying to be focused on through the years, is looking ahead, trying to figure out what can we do to not just influence the building codes, although that's been a large part of it up to this point, but also be looking ahead to drive the market forward. So where are those opportunities? And that's why I think some of the things I've seen at these design studios that you folks are running are just absolutely, they're great. They've got a lot of good thinking put into them. What these folks, I love what the couple that I've gotten a little bit involved in. I love the thinking of the students is, well, why not? Well, why can't we do this? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves as an industry. Why can't we do this? Just because we haven't done it before, or we don't want to do the things that we've done for the last 30 years, or we'll become obsolete as a construction material and system. So in my mind, this is something that lends itself to opportunities within the design studios to be kind of thinking outside the box. That's exciting to me. So how does that design studio concept and the things that you choose to be your topic of focus, how might that relate to potential R&D opportunities? Let me try to describe a little bit about how that goes about. I told you about our committee system. We have so many technical committees, and it's typically coming from a technical committee that we identify a need. The need is a research need. We vote on it. Is this a legitimate need? Is it worth exploring? From which we'll put a request for proposal together, and then we'll take that request for proposal and we'll send it out to folks that we would expect response from. And most of those go to universities. Some of them might go to independent or private labs, but most of them would go to the universities. Unfortunately, I think what ends up happening is we send it to the folks that we know, and folks that we know have some interest or involvement in that, and that tends to be a little bit short-sighted. So we don't mean to do that. We want to make it as broad out there as far as a broad-reaching population as we can in terms of soliciting proposals back. But again, we need to expand our base of folks that we know how to contact and how to communicate with them and so forth. So anyway, so these identified research projects come up. They are voted on whether to support them or not. Requests for proposals are put together. They're issued. They come back. The proposals are reviewed, and some advisory group will sort of adjudicate on which one they want to recommend to the council for adoption to move forward. Occasionally, we'll get a proposal that comes in that's unsolicited, and some of those have been some of the most intriguing. That it doesn't start with something that's been identified through technical committee. It's something that some researcher in the university primarily or typically has this idea and wants to know, is this something that's of interest that PCI would support? So we do get those from time to time, and some of those have been quite interesting. One of the pushbacks on that, so we have to be a little bit careful, is that we want to be careful that we are taking our R&D dollars and not being too narrowly focused on where we channel them, that we're trying to get a lot of different universities involved. And I think we can do a better job of that. And I also think we can do a better job of broadening our scope beyond just the purely technical, the structural and the material aspects that we've been focused on pretty much up to this date. The other research program that we have that's going on, and this might be of more immediate interest to you all, is it's a Jenny Fellowship. Paul Jenny was our first structural director. He was a pioneer in precast prestressed concrete. He was the first director of PCI, was in it for many, many years, just quite a man. So after he retired, in his honor, they decided to start a fellowship program and name it the Jenny Fellowship. Originally, way back when, it was just two fellowships at $3,000 each. Now it's up to 5 at $40,000 each. And what we are thinking is that probably needs to be increased. So we've got a task group looking at what recommendation we come back to the R&D Council to see what we might do to increase that. But again, what we want to do is try to get quite a bit of engagement from a broader spectrum of universities than what we currently have. So when we send this Jenny Fellowship, comes out every year. It's going to be coming out here by, I think, in October, November. When we send that out, we make it as available as we know how to make it, and send it to as many people as we know how. With the fellowship guidelines, we send out a list of research needs. These are identified research needs within PCI, and as you can imagine, from where they come, they're primarily structurally related or material structural interface related. The categories currently are component design and detailing, seismic, structural systems, anchorage to concrete. Then we get into wall panels, which might be interesting. You would think it could be potentially interesting to the architectural community, but the two subjects that are listed are crack mitigation for insulated panels with continuous insulation and effective reinforcement to improve edge lifting devices in thin panels. Now, an architectural student's not going to get really excited about that, I don't think. So, again, we need to broaden our thinking on that. We've got a materials category. We do have a sustainability category, and that might be of some interest. And actually, 3D printing. We have on the last sheet, there's an architectural category, but it's not something that's going to, spur the mind of the architect. Is more of a engineering oriented thing as it relates to architectural concrete, effective moisture content, post-pour replacement techniques for things that need to be fixed. Look at bond and anchorage and things like that. The last section on here has to do with operations. We started an innovation committee here back, I want to say 5 years ago, maybe it was 6. But the purpose of this innovation committee under the R&D Council was to try to spur on some thinking as to, hey, what do we need to be thinking about that's out there in the future, not that's just right in front of us. Where do we need to be thinking outside the box? Where do we need to be applying innovative thinking towards how it might influence how we spend our research dollars to start laying the groundwork for what might come ahead down in the future. And in my mind, this is a very good place for maybe you folks as you're looking at your design studios and the topics within your design studios to see if there's some sort of a tie there. So far, the innovation has been more driven towards process type things, manufacturing process, using automation. A couple of things that came out, there was Mississippi State did a Jenny Fellowship about 4 or 5 years ago using virtual reality for safety training. And that was really kind of neat, that what came out of that. Virginia Tech did one, I think the year after that, where they were going to be able to use not drone technology, but RFID to be able to, they were going to be able, more than RFID as well. It was going to be able to use, be able to visually capture quality control information that didn't require some person to do it, but it was going to be able to find my note here so that I'm stumbling around a little bit. They were trying to figure out how to come up with various scanning methods to enable real-time quality control of the fabricated product, because that's obviously very important to us. And particularly the more you get into architectural work, the more finely controlled the dimensional aspects have to be, as well as the aesthetics and everything else. So this is what Virginia Tech was thinking about, and that was kind of neat. So using that as an example, just to get you guys thinking about stuff in the future. I don't know if that transcended their industrial engineering department. It may or may not have, but if it didn't, gosh, shame on them for not interfacing with the architectural department to find out from an architect standpoint, what are the major constraints that we need to be focused on that we can help the concrete producer make sure what's coming out of the plant meets my needs. So identifying the architect's needs, the aesthetic need, what level of control, whatnot, that would inform that type of a undertaking that much more, I think. Maybe even, I don't know, getting the structural engineering guys involved in it in terms of, interestingly, I'm meandering here, but interestingly, Oak Ridge was talking about figuring out a way to use virtual technology to help make sure that when architectural pieces are being set in place on the building, that it could help do it in a more efficient manner and a more timely manner, instead of the erector trying to manhandle this big piece of concrete. Is there some way that using lasers or something else that these things could be put in place, on the building in a more efficient manner? So, I mean, just those 3 elements right there, you think, wow, there's a whole lot that could be done at the university from academia's support of driving us forward into newer methods, better techniques, and just a whole new way of thinking about how we approach things. some of the things I was thinking about as far as, what your departments might be interested in submitting for Jenny Fellowship might have to do with modularization, might have to do with building envelopes. It might have to do with, I don't know, any number of various things. But I think that's what we're trying to figure out how to do, is to take this, R&D function within PCI, make it open and available to all that's going on in the architectural community. It's primarily the architectural departments. There's some civil and construction management, and that's great. But the architectural community as well, because there's so much that they could be working on that could drive our business forward, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to see if I got through all the stuff I wanted to make y'all aware of. Like I say, just a project, proof of concept type of thing. Why not? Those are the types of things that R&D are really, intended to do, I believe. And I think from what I've seen, that's what a lot of your students are sort of wrestle with. And that's why they're engaging with the local producer, where they sort of figure about, well, can this be done, or how can this be done, and whatnot. So anyway, I'm not sure I'm starting to meander or blather here, so I'll be quiet. I think I've said my piece. What thoughts do you folks have, or what, Marty or Dawn? I mean, you folks have been around this for some time. Anything you want to add to what I've said?
Well, the PCI Foundation does not support research, but I think what we're finding is that some of our studios have figured out how to tie in research through pedagogy with what they're doing. Like Tulane did that with their Lafitte Parkway that they did, and I think Pablo is doing that with the panels that he's creating with his students. But I think that there's other ways that they can do that, and maybe even take it a step further by getting the R&D committee and some of the research funding from PCI as well, and kind of combining pedagogy and research. So I'm hoping that there might be some questions along those lines.
You said that very succinctly. Thank you. It took me too long to say what you said in just a minute. But that, I mean, again, think about it. That's, you can look at it from a limited basis on this Jenny Fellowship type thing. And that's typically a graduate student working over the course of a year, maybe a year and a half, on a specific project. But so many of these Jenny Fellowships have led to further research, because they point the way towards, we need more funded research in this, because this is what we found out, and this is where this is going to lead. I forgot which proposal I read recently from one of the universities, but it built over a 4-year period. It was a progression of this was going to inform that, which was going to inform that, which would get to the final outcome. So if you think about it, particularly if there's other disciplines involved, man, there could be all kinds of intriguing prospects that could be generated. And again, it's not for the foundation that does the funding, it is through PCI. But I'm representing PCI in this, so I guess I'm representing both. But we could tie what the good work going on in the foundation to the opportunities allowed or expressed by PCI in such a manner that I think there would be a great synergy.
I have a question, if you don't mind. The Jenny Fellowship is intended to support a student or a faculty. I guess the question is, because I'm looking for funding for research, but my understanding was that this fellowship is more leaning towards a student with a faculty support, of course. But is it possible to apply for this Jenny Fellowship as a faculty for a specific research, which most likely will include students as research assistant, but not necessarily as a class?
Well, right now it's specifically for students, but I'm supposed to be leading a task group to reevaluate where these fellowships go and how we go about them and so forth. And I think that's an excellent question, and it's really a good suggestion as well. To include that as not exclude that as an option for, where this fellowship funding might go. But
Right.
to this
Yeah.
point right now, it is geared particularly to a master's or PhD student.
Okay. So until that change is made, faculty cannot apply directly, or it can? Okay, my question is, because you said that right now we focus more towards a student, right? Funding a
It
student.
is.
But
It is. So
okay.
unless we can get it changed, unless we can make the recommendation to change it and get the council to approve it before the next solicitation goes out, then the next solicitation would follow suit with what's been done in the past, that there would be a master's or PhD student candidate.
Right.
But I'm taking what you said under advisement. I think that's a good thing we need to explore.
Yeah, I think it will be very helpful, at least in my experience, because I have a PCI Foundation grant, which is a class, right? It's related to my research, but it's not, I cannot say it's exclusively my research. So I think having funding for faculty, which always includes students, right? At least in my experience, but it will be very helpful because it's really, at least in my case, being a tenure track, it's really important to have support, right, outside of the university that really help us to develop our research further. There's always students involved in one way or another, but I think to me will be a very good change to, well, at least option to include in this application for this.
That's great feedback. Thank you, Pablo.
Mhm.
Timely as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or thoughts?
I do think, that research and Pablo, exactly as he's saying, research and curriculum are not often mutually exclusive in design schools. Here in our architecture program, we in fact have what we call research studios, although research wouldn't be quite as rigorous as my engineering friends on here probably. But in any event, I think there is good to hear you talk about intersectional opportunities. Because I think in terms of getting, design education, architectural education, and the architecture profession engaged, that is the way to do it, and realizing that it's a transdisciplinary approach. And so, for example, Oak Ridge, we're here in Kentucky, and so Oak Ridge is just down the road, and our local gate precast plant in Winchester, I believe, was one of the ones that worked with them and their additive processing. So an example might be that, part of the foundation is that we visit them, we talk about, the cutting edge and that sort of thing, but then could also have a continued research sort of partnership. So I do think those are these intersectional opportunities. And right now, often these things get very siloed. So yeah, I think we'd love to talk more about that.
I appreciate that, Joe. And I think you're exactly right. We got to break down those silos, because then I'm thinking, man, and then let the floodgates open and look out, because who knows what we could come up with. What school are you with, Joe?
University of Kentucky.
Ah, okay. That other basketball school.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
Okay. Well, you don't see my little diploma from Carolina basketball school in 1971 on the wall, but it's, Dean Smith signed it, so the real deal.
Muhammad is he's treading on thin ice here.
I'm just realizing my background at Duke might harm my chances here.
Oh gosh, I didn't need to hear that. I put my foot in my mouth one time when somebody was in doing training and introduced himself as being from the Raleigh area. I said, well, which program do you support? And he went, oh, of course, the one in Durham. I'm like, oh man. And it turned out he and Krzyzewski are best of friends or something. So I'm like, okay.
That is dangerous.
Yeah, keep your mouth shut, Greg.
I just won't bring it up anymore. Thank you so much for the walkthrough. I don't know if you wanted to answer Satar's questions first, but I had two quick questions I can ask afterwards.
Oh, I didn't even look at the chat. I'm sorry. Yes, Satar, we'll make sure. In fact, before another one goes out, I'll get with Jared Brewy, our technical director, and make sure that you're on the list, and anyone else that wants to make sure that you're on the list, just to be sure. we don't have any RFPs currently out. The Jenny is a separate program. So rather than a specifically desired RFP, rather than the broader Jenny Fellowship, that's coming out towards the end of the year, and we can make sure that you're included in that as well. If Marty passed on to you all what I put together when I wasn't able to be there, there's a list of the fellowships that have been awarded since 2018 and what the project titles are. And you'll look at that list and I would suspect you'll roll your eyes because they're all structurally related. And that's, again, where we need to broaden our thinking and come up with some other things that we can do. As far as final reports go, generally our final reports from the Jenny Fellowships end up in one of our technical publications, it's PCI Journal. I would say 2 out of 3 at least end up with a published article. That's kind of their deliverable, if you will, of getting that written up and published in the PCI Journal. That's typical. But again, we've got an architectural geared journal, the Ascent, and we could certainly be looking to make sure that we've got things there as well. Did that answer the question? Or
yes, thank you so much. And sorry, I had to type because my internet is very unstable here. I'm back home in Middle East, so didn't want to lose you guys. So I'm trying to keep everything on a low usage. But yeah, that answers the questions. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Mo, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Two questions. First, for the Jenny Fellowship, I am a little unclear on the timeline. I know the applications are due in January. And the reason I'm asking is if we're applying with a PhD student or master's student that hasn't actually been accepted yet, I'm wondering if it's possible to time it so that they get the fellowship in line with an offer for admissions or something like that, or do they have to be students that are already actively in the program?
That's a good question. Yes, it does. I think it's typically been ones that have already been accepted into the program, I believe.
Okay.
But again, I don't know that that has to be a strict stipulation. So, just as I was talking with Pablo, I mean, maybe that's something that we need to broaden our thinking about, because it is a limited window. They go out in November, December, they're due back in February, so they can be voted on in March, and then they're released, end of March, early April. So that window is pretty tight. Right.
Because I imagine it would make for really competitive offers for students that we think would be really talented as a way to bring them in to continue doing this research with us. But the problem I get is trying to figure out, like, is the funding then tied to the professor, even though it's going to the student? And if for some reason the student's not able to take the fellowship, so that's what I'm.
Wasn't there one last year where he switched schools, Greg, and he didn't get to take the funding with him? It stayed.
That was the difficulty. If it was tied to the professor, it needs to be tied to the school.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
As opposed to the professor, but I think it should be that rather than necessarily the student. And we've had a number. I mean, I've been around it long enough that there's been a number of ones that the students come and gone, and they bring in another student.
Great. Okay.
So I think so. To your thing, I think unless you've got somebody identified, I don't know that even now that would be a disqualifier.
Yeah.
If they're not already accepted into the program.
Okay, that's good to know. So there's some flexibility, it sounds like,
yes,
at least. Okay, great. Thank you. And then my second question was more for the PCI funding for coursework. Is there a limitation? I know it's meant to go for the course, but if we wanted, for instance, to do preparation over a preceding summer with students that would be hired to help out, is that done usually, or is there a limit on when you can actually use the funding that the PCI Foundation gives? Because a lot of times, like if we want to do an advanced studio or advanced research class, we'll have to do some work ahead of time.
Right. We send out funding July 1st.
Okay.
So you would get your proposal accepted in, usually we accept them in April. We send out the MOUs, get everything straight, and then by July 1st, then we send out the funding July 1st, and you can start anytime you want, but the funding doesn't get released till July 1st.
Right.
And
And there's no problem with using it to hire students to help with work and preparation?
No, we have people use it to hire students all the time.
Amazing. All right. Thank you.
And because a lot of it is curriculum development,
Mhm.
and especially if you're doing like a research curriculum, yeah, people are preparing ahead of the class. Of course you
Yeah.
are. You can't
Yeah.
just like start day one and be like,
Exactly.
well, I don't know what we're doing this semester. So yeah, we do expect that you'll be doing some preparation before then, but we don't release the funding until July 1st.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you so much.
Yep, and Mo, I'm super glad that you're here. So thank you for joining the call, because we're kind of in that time frame now, right? Where we need to start planning. And because you'll be at the summer meeting, you can actually meet people that you'd work with on Greg's team. So we're actually fairly close in Williamsburg to Petersburg, which is where the plant is. And so you can actually connect with them and start to think about, as you're evaluating your proposal and who you would be working with, you know, directly on Greg's team. We'll probably have several folks from Tyndall be there, so I can make those connections for you. And as you progress through the fall, the one deliverable is the one pager in December, which is kind of outlining your intent for the proposal. That'll be something that we want to think about for the end of the year.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Can't wait.
I have another question, maybe for you, Greg. You mentioned that another option to get funding for research is through solicitation, right? Come up with a proposal. I wonder how that works. How should we write a proposal? Who should we send that to? And I don't know if you can give us a little bit of
It
information.
would typically come in, it would come into Jared Brewery, BREWE. He's PCI's technical and structural, or technical and what's his official title? He's the top technical dog in at PCI.
Technical director.
Thank you, Marty. So it would go to him. I think it would be wise to, you know, maybe touch base first and at least give an outline of what's proposed before too much effort was put in to put a fully developed one together, just to kind of test the waters as to does this sound like something that and I'd be glad to be a sounding board, or my replacement as council chair, Andy Osborne. I think, you know, either one of us or Jared would be a good sounding board to say, what do you think about this? And just kind of, you know, provide the outline. And then if it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like that would be something that really would be of interest, then to you know, that would be showing some support towards putting a full proposal together that could be put in front of the board. And it could also let that person, whether it's the council chair or Jared, let the council know that this is going to be coming in, kind of give them a heads up.
And one more question related to that is, what about a funding amount? Is there a limit or approximate?
Well, there's a $64,000 question. There's really not, I think, but you kind of have to be a bit thinking about, from the council standpoint, they have to be judicious on having some limited pool of funds, how much should be apportioned to what. So something coming in at a lower dollar, but still having some high value would obviously be the optimal. But, you know, can you really get that high value without spending that much more? So that's really the trick, is to find it. But I would think something coming in on typically just into the six-figure range would be what I'd expect to see, I think, from what I've seen in the past.
Thank you.
From your experience, does that sound ballpark of what you'd be thinking, or?
Yeah, I think, well, it depends on the, you know, on the actual project, but no, I just wanted to have a ballpark idea, because it can be as small as a couple $1,000, or it can be something, as you said, maybe six figures. I'm thinking of something in between. I don't really know. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I think there's more success. There's more likelihood for success the less monies that are expended, because that still then saves some amount in the pool for whatever is kind of come up next. And it might be
Right,
some
right.
urgent need that we find out about that we don't have things that we generate ourselves, or it might be something else that comes in, unsolicited.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you see many requests come in that are to find matching dollars for other grants? Like I know some of the funding bodies are looking for matching dollars from industry, and see that as a big plus to give out a grant to a university. So they want to see that the industry supports it.
Not just the industry, well, yeah, the industry within PCI and the broader industry, the construction construction materials or whatever it might be. So that's a great, thank you, Marty. That's a great point, is that any other sources of funding that have been secured, whether it's a PCI producer, or whether it's like this Charles Pankow Foundation, or they're out in California, I think, or whether it's whatever it might be government funding, might be through NIST or otherwise. But anything like that would obviously give that much more, not just credibility to it, but that much more impetus behind PCI wanting to jump on board. Well, all righty.
I have one more question. Sorry.
That's all right.
Especially about the NIST and Oak Ridge projects, I'm very interested to know how these projects were developed. Not the proposal stage, of course, but I'm curious to know whether it was like an RFP published by NIST and Oak Ridge, and then they got PCI involved because of mutual interest, or vice versa. What were the topics? I'm assuming since these are federal agencies, we could find their more information about them on their websites too.
I would think that would be the place to start, but I don't have a ready answer for that. That's a good question though. But if you'll either send me or through Marty, make sure I get your contact information, I'll research that and see what I can find out about these projects that have been around here for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and how those were solicited, or how knowledge of those was brought about in terms of funding.
Thank you.
Sure.
I would also suggest looking back at the PCI journal. If you haven't looked at that, to see what kind of research has been published there. And there's been some papers published on that, on those research projects there.
You can actually go to the website and to the journal and do a search for, in fact, I think there is a bibliography though of all the articles that have been written through the years. It's quite a library.
I just put a link to it in the chat section.
Thank you both.
Yep. Well, I appreciate everybody's time this morning, and again, I appreciate all you're doing at your respective schools with the programs. It's exciting stuff. And thank you for helping us get this next generation of young architects thinking right about all the marvelous things you can do with precast concrete.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Marty.
Yeah, give me a call if you have any questions. I'm at Marty McI at PCI-foundation.org. If you want to send me an email, or 708-386-3715 if you want to give me a call. So thanks, everybody.